YouTube! How's it going? Welcome to Trip Boomers Tech-Bodge Emporium. In this one, guys, I've seen a lot of chatter about, can you build a system to match the PS5 Pro or beat it? People are like, go on, do it. Go on, go ahead, do it. So I'm going to show you my thoughts on this whole PC to beat up PlayStation Pro. Look, I'm not taking away from the ability of a PS5 Pro. You know, it allows people to game. If you want to be on Sony's platform, you go ahead. But I'm going to give you my thoughts on the whole thing and what I would suggest. And yes, the short form is if you're willing to, yes, you could destroy a PS5 Pro for the same money. But we're gonna get into that, and I'll show you what I mean. So sit tight, and should we have a look? Should we have a look what I'm waffling about? Hey, shall we? Right, guys. So I've got up here. I've got the basic price for a PS5 Pro. You can get them cheaper, obviously second hand and stuff. But if you for me, right? For me, if I was buying a PS5 Pro, right, I don't see the point in a PlayStation that doesn't have a disc drive. Like, especially a Pro PlayStation. Like, part of the appeal of a console is that you've still got access to that solid media and that back catalogue of that solid media that you've probably got sat on your shelf if you're buying a PS5 Pro. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't see the point in having one without a disc drive, right? So for starters, disc drive is an option for me, a must-have for me if I was buying a PS5 Pro. And the PS5 Pro with a disc drive is basically 760 quid. Pretty much everywhere it's 770 quid. So we'll say 760. See, that's the price for it. 760 quid. Everywhere I see it as a package with the disc drive, that is how much it is. Right? I've looked through. So we're going to use 760 as a base price. Now, I'm sorry, whether you want to like it or not, the PS5 Pro fans, the PlayStation fans that don't want to take this into account. But at the end of the day, yeah, if I buy this, right, for 760 quid, I still can't use it until I pay 60 quid. $60, so 50 quid probably over in the UK. But basically, you have to pay that to even play the game. I'm not talking about the extra tier or the premium tier. I just mean the essential to play on PlayStation. 60 quid. And knowing PlayStation, it probably is 60 quid. So I'm going to say it 60. So that means that plus 60 is 820. So before you can even play your games, you're paying 820 quid for the first year. We won't go into the fact that the next year after that and the year after that you have to pay that again. We'll just stick with 1 year's of gaming, okay? So 60 quid, 820, right? So for 830 quid, which is the price that I'm going with, because I would not buy a PS5 Pro if it didn't have a disc drive, and I'm going to have to pay that 60 quid to game. Like, I have to pay it to even be able to use the console. So it has to be incorporated in the price, at least the first year on a base price. I have to incorporate it because you can't use the fucking thing if you don't. So, like, especially for the games that most people use the PlayStation for, which funnily enough are Xbox games, but that's besides the point. The fact of the matter is, yes, there are going to be some things that you're going to play on your back catalogue, especially because you've got a friggin' disc drive that you've already got. So you've got that option. But you would have to have that subscription to play anything that's online. So for me, that's part of the price, 820 quid. So for 820 quid, what I would recommend, the closest to that, is this, which is a 12600 KF. Before anyone starts, don't worry, I have options from the other side and I have explanations for everything that I'm throwing down here. But that being said, this is what I would recommend for that price. Comes up as 836. Don't pay attention to the shipping because it's Newegg. It's just them fudging the prices around, because everywhere else this is basically roughly about the price of this CPU with free shipping. So this is just Newegg fudging the price to make it look lower, right? So yeah, this is what I'd recommend. It's close enough to 820 quid for me to say it's 15 quid. Like I'm not even going into it. It's 15 quid, right? So I don't mind this, right? So yeah, 12600 KF, 32 gigs of DDR4, 6000 CL30. So you got that 10 nanosecond sweet spot like you had on DDR4 with 3200 CL16. It's the same. It's basically DDR5's sweet spot. It's DDR5's 3200 CL16 that is DDR5 6000 CL30. Anyways, there's 1 terabyte of M.2. Before anyone jumps in and goes, yeah, well, the PlayStation comes with 2 terabytes. Yeah, it does, yeah. But I'm starting you off with 1 terabyte. And you see this here? See this motherboard here? See 1, 2, 3. So you got 3 M.2 slots. So in the following month, when you got like 60 odd quid, or you can literally get like another terabyte for 50 odd quid. You can put an extra 2 terabytes in there if you want. It's about 80 quid if you shop around. So the thing is, this is much more upgradable. So that memory thing is just sort of like, next time you've got 50 quid, chuck another terabyte in there. You've got another 2 slots, so you can do whatever you want with that. PlayStation doesn't have that. You can upgrade the memory, but you've got to buy an expensive M.2 to do that, because you've got to just basically take that 2 terabyte and put in well, I don't know how high it'll let you, but I'm sure it'll let you put a 4 terabyte in there. But you don't have that. You don't have an extra 2 slots to upgrade your memory in the future, and it's not going to be like throw in another terabyte or whatever. Whereas with a PC, that's literally what you can do. So the memory thing is a bit of a farce. Anyways, so yeah, I've gone with a Crucial P3 Plus. It's a fast enough drive. Yeah, it's Gen 4, but it doesn't matter. It's like 5,000 mega transfers or whatever a second. Pairing that with a 9060 XT 16GB, because for 320 quid new, there's nothing better. There is nothing better in this price range new than the 9060 XT. And this one, you can get a what is it, Red Devil, I can't remember, base one from from Colourful. Their base one is like a 5 or less, but it's a much shorter card, smaller. It's gonna have a much poorer cooler on it. So this one for an extra 5 is like a no-brainer to me. So this is, to me, the best card in this price bracket of 320 quid for you to buy today in the UK, right? This Sapphire Pulse 9660 XT 16GB, because I don't care whether you're a Team Green fan or whatever. I don't care, right? This is just literally gone round price. The only reason there's an Intel in there is because it's price. It is a little bit cheaper than the competition. I'll show you. I've got this here. This is literally the exact same system, but with a 7600X and basically the same motherboard, but it's their B650 instead of a 760, so it's a little bit older. But it is the same motherboard, but the motherboard costs an extra tenner, and the CPU costs an extra tenner. So it is a more expensive build, but it's the exact same build with a 7600X instead of a 12600KF. And the reason I chose that will bring up this. I use CPU Monkey just so that I'm using the same one. It gives me a rough idea of what they're like against each other. It does line up the stats quite nicely here, so that's why I kind of use CPU Monkey. It seems to line things up quite nicely for me to just be like, you can see exactly the differences. So this is a 7600X, which is a 6-core 12-thread from AMD, up against the 12600KF K, but it doesn't make much odds. It's just an iGPU. If anything, the KF will actually run a little bit better because it doesn't have that iGPU creating heat, even on idle. But 10-core 16-thread. Obviously it's a 6-core, but you get like 4 little help me cores over on the Intel side. The graphics wise, personally I would say the 770 UHD 770 is actually a better GPU than the Raphael that you get over on the 7600X, but I'm just looking at stats there. Do you know what I mean? It might have a smaller process and boost a bit faster, but everything else down here is a bit balling in comparison, isn't it? So anyways, everything else is pretty much the same all the way down the stack. Price wise, they're almost identical as well. The Intel one's a little bit cheaper, and then boom, look at that average performance. Single core, they're practically the same. Multi-core, they are basically the same CPU. Do you know what I mean? The Intel's got a little bit more multi-core because it's got those 4 help me cores, and the AMD's got better single core because it boosts faster. Like they are almost one for one. This is the closest these chips are some of the closest these two companies get. Right? It depends what you want. Like, you're gonna get some better multi-core performance over on the 12600K, but the 7600 is just as fast in single core and not far off the pace in multi-core, let's be fair. So they are very, very close CPUs. That is why with these two setups I've gone with these two CPUs. However, right, we'll take this one for example, because you can save a tenner on the CPU by going with CEX here, but I'm going to bring up CEX now because, right, so we're in CEX. CEX is a store, a website in the UK here where you can exchange stuff. I think they like to call it sex, but I just call it CEX because it makes no freaking sense. The sex makes no freaking sense. So it's CEX, right? Anyways, overall, when you're buying a CPU, right, the actual CPU bit, right, that's underneath this heatsink here, that's underneath this big chunk of copper, admittedly, when you are one-to-one with the silicon die, you can crack it if you put the pressure in the wrong friggin' place. So you gotta be gentle when you're like that. But when it's like this, and it's nice and tucked away behind a massive chunk of copper and stuff, in terms of processing, CPUs are pretty friggin' tough. Like, usually, if they're going to die, they usually die catastrophically, and it's usually in the first year of its life. Past that, they usually just keep going for like ever, right? Obviously, Intel 13 and 14th gen has got some degradation issues, which is why it's such a shocker. But the 12th gen doesn't have those issues, and down in the i5 situation, almost none of them have any of that issues anyway. So you're kind of safe in that sense. So I would recommend going. What the fuck? Come on. I'm having some struggles with my capture card at the moment, so as I've said in a previous video, I have a replacement. It's gonna happen soon. We're just nursing this one. but yeah, it keeps getting cut off. Anyways, as I was saying, over in CEX, it's a used parts tech website shop. There are plenty of stores around the UK that you can walk into. I have one in town here. Anyways, yeah. So over in here, you can save yourself 15 quid if you got a KF, but I know that they don't have one in stock. However, I do have my kids on the internet upstairs. If you're wondering why everything's so freaking slow, like they're playing games, both of them. So they're hammering my internet, and I've got some copper to the cab. We're waiting for it to be hooked up. It shouldn't be too long, and then I'll have better internet. Anyways, so they do have a K in stock, and the only difference is the iGPU. So you get the iGPU, and this is a tenner cheaper than this one. So you're saving a tenner there. Now, if you look at this, it's 320 quid, right? So you're saving a tenner there. Now, you could take that tenner, you can add a tenner, and in here, they have it in stock. For 340 quid, you can have a 3080. Now, I hear what you're saying. Well, 3080, the 9060 XT's got more VRAM. Yeah, it's got more VRAM, right? But here we have it, up in Tech Power Up, right? We're looking at the base model of the 9060 XT as well. So I'm going to take this as sort of like almost gospel in performance ranking at this precise moment, right? So we've got the 9060 XT, 16GB, is 100% here. So that's our base point, right? The 3080 is 32% faster in performance. So yes, it's got 10 gigabytes less. So there will probably be points where you have to make slight alterations to textures or something so that a game runs a little smoother. I'm not going to take that away from the point. However, right, it is 32% faster, so that's a considerable amount of FPS, right, in general, like the game running, right? So it's 32% faster, so it is a faster GPU. Yes, it's got 6 gigabytes less VRAM, but in general, AMD tends to use like 1 or 2 gigabytes more than Nvidia in most situations. So like you could consider it basically 4 gigabytes more VRAM over on the AMD side, just because it tends to use more VRAM for that process. So if you get me, so you do have more VRAM over on the AMD side, and it is ever so slightly cheaper. But for a 3080 to be 32% faster is a considerable chunk. And you've got DLSS, which is also DLSS 4 now, so you have access to that, so you can use that. That's not a problem. So you've got a better upscaler, you've got a better anti-aliaser, you've got reflex, and because AMD are nice enough to make FSR 3.1 and above, basically that the frame gen is completely separate to the upscaling, which means that in quite a few games you can use DLSS 4 as your upscaler and still use AMD's frame gen for a little bit of an extra boost if you wanted to. Like I've done it with the 3060, so it's more than possible and it's more than capable of doing that. So all the benefits that you get from AMD's 9060 XT, although they will probably run better on that GPU, the 3080 here has all of those benefits, plus it has DLSS and reflex, and it's 32% faster. So for me, I would pay £10 more here and get the CPU and a 3080 from CEX, because CEX with this kind of stuff, look, free 5-year warranty on this GPU. So in 5 years they will either replace the GPU, within 5 years they will replace the GPU, or give you credit, in-store credit for this amount, because it's what you paid. you can't ask for better than that. It's 5 years. So like you're backed up for 5 years, and with something like a CPU, you're expected to put thermal paste on it and stuff. There's nothing that you can really faff with. And with these LGA sockets, there's no pins for you to have to worry about on the CPU. So everything's pretty contained. The only thing that you would need to ever worry about, and I'll bring them up now because I've got a set of all of them. Right, okay. So online, you can easily get right, okay. So online, you can easily get something like this. So you can literally compare your CPU up against one online, just to make sure that everything's there. Because this is basically all CEX are going to do, because they don't have sockets to drop the CPU in all the stores. This is what they do. They'll bring up a image, they will check all the pins on the bottom, they'll make sure that all these resistors and stuff are all in the right places. As you can see here, 13th and 14th are basically the same. There's a few minor changes. This is upside down in comparison to this. However, 12th gen is a little bit different in the middle here. It's a little shorter. It's just a little bit different. There's like these here. Instead, only got those two there, and this bit here is a little bit longer, and so it's moved down. So there is some differences, but like I said, you can literally just pull up one of these, an image off Google. It doesn't take long for you to find one. And it can show you where all the little resistors and stuff are, so you can literally visually check the chip. And usually with these LGA sockets, as long as all of this is right, you're usually pretty good. As I said, I wouldn't get a second-hand 13th or 14th gen CPU, but as you can see, the differences are very slight. Like this is a slightly brighter green, but it might be the same green. I think this is actually darker 14th, but 13th was on blue, so I wouldn't even look at those as second-hand options. But 12th gen, that's fine. Obviously the 700 KF, but they're basically the same. I just used it as an example. And then you got AMD here, which is even nicer to check because there's nothing on the underneath. You just got to make sure that all these little resistors are where they should be, and that the empty spots are empty spots in comparison to your CPU. That's pretty much it. And obviously, again, CEX give you a 5-year warranty. So if you put your CPU in and it doesn't work, they'll replace it, or refund you, or whatever the weather. But that's not a problem. So 5-year warranty is next level. Right, there is one other thing that so yeah, you're paying about 840 quid for this as a system, but it's what I would recommend. You can for an extra 30 quid on both of these setups. Both of these setups, for an extra 30 quid, you can considerably increase your power. Because for 180 quid instead of 145 quid, you can get either a 7700X or a 14600KF. Now this CPU, buying it brand new, would not be an issue. All the BIOSes would be up to date. You make sure your motherboard BIOS is up to date, and you can buy this CPU brand new. There's no problems. It'll run properly, and you shouldn't get degradation or anything because it's brand new. Like it's not the chunk that is obviously the problem. And the 7700X is basically that step up for that same 30 quid-ish over on AMD. So this is the option of stepping up, which gives you an 8-core over on AMD, and it gives you a 14-core over on the 14600K. Still based on a 6-core, whereas obviously the AMD is now running on 8-core, so you've got that. However, the 14600KF has also got 8 help me cores, and they're pretty quick. And obviously the boost on this is a lot better, and in comparison to 12600KF, this has got a lower base clock and a much higher boost clock for both the P cores and the E cores, which means it's more efficient and it's faster. It's about 30% faster. So you come right down here, and then obviously you're in the same sort of boat as we were before, but this is a little bit faster. AMD's got more L3 cache, Intel's got more L2 cache. It's just yin and yang all the way down. You've got a few more PCIe lanes, which gives you a bit more bandwidth over on AMD. This is a very, very close match. Like you'll see here, at single core performance, they are basically the same. They are basically performing the same in single core performance, and obviously because of those 8 help me cores over on Intel just creep the multi-core by 15%. But both these CPUs are like a 30% increase on both of these systems for basically 30 quid. So over on the AMD it'd be 830 quid, and over on the Intel side it'd be like 860. So 880 and 860. So that's basically where you're at. So it's like with PC, you can just keep doing that. You know, you can just keep going, oh, but if I throw an extra 30 quid in here, I can get this. If I get an extra 40 quid in here, I can get that. But I stopped at this point because this point came as close, you know, this basically came as close as damn it to the 820 quid it would cost me to have a PS5 Pro and the year's subscription for me to play on it. So for a year's use of a PS5 Pro with a good disk drive, there is literally no point in buying a Pro without one. Like, how are you a Pro buyer if you're not buying the disk drive? I mean, it baffles me, the idea of someone buying a Pro version of the PlayStation without a disk drive. Just, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it sort of like takes away the whole point of having a friggin' console. Right, one of the better benefits of having a console is having that disk drive and having that sort of backwards compatibility, so that your huge catalog wall of games can all be thrown into the friggin' thing and used. But no. So for me, it has to have a disk drive, so it's 760 quid. And then a year's subscription is 60 quid. So that's 820 quid. This is 836 quid, and this is a PC. It could do much more. You can bring in like operating system. You don't actually have to buy Windows. It will just work for free. You just get a watermark, and somewhere along the lines you could just buy a CD key or something for like 15-20 quid and get that watermark removed. It's not the be all and end all. It's only a watermark. There are some things like some customizations and stuff within Windows that you just can't do. But if you're just using it to play games on and you don't give a shit about the watermark, you don't need to spend on it, do you? And the only reason I've got an 850 watt power supply here was because I was setting this system up to be able to take this GPU. Like, you can go a bit cheaper if you want to. I found a power supply that would power this system, which was like 550 watts, and it was like 50 quid. So you could knock another 20 quid off there if you really wanted to, and this would be like 800 quid. But even though this isn't necessarily an amazing power supply, the thing is, for another 15 quid you could get a pretty decent gold rated one at 850 quid, which is what I would probably recommend. But again, I was keeping the price down. This is not a power supply I would recommend. It's just one that fit the budget. You know, sometimes you just have to buy things to fit the budget. Look at this case. It's just because it's 25 quid and it came with fans. It comes with like 2 or 3 fans and it's 55 quid, 25 quid. That's the only reason it's there. I just squeeze everything in. So we've got a micro ATX board and a micro ATX case. That's the only reason the board's there. The board is there because it's got 3 slots of M.2, and that's why I went with it. The only reason I didn't go with a cheaper option over here on the AMD one to keep the price down is because I wanted those 3 M.2s, and as soon as you drop out of that 125 bracket on AMD side, you only get 2 if you're lucky. So I didn't want to drop off having those 3 slots. I wanted a 1-for-1, and this is a 1-for-1. It costs an extra 20 quid over on AMD to basically get the same performance as this system here. Both of them have an AMD card in it. Again, for 320 quid in the UK right now, there is not a better GPU than this 9060 XT 16GB. Burn me in the comments. I do not care. There is not a better GPU for this price range. If you really, really want to cut down, you could literally put a B580 in there. You can actually get them for like 250 quid at the minute, 260 or something. So that's not bad. You can get like a Sapphire 3 fan for 260 quid, but the 3 fan probably won't fit in this case. I've made everything so that it hopefully fit. Everything's sort of designed that way. And I will admit that if you were stepped up from this 12600K to a 14600K, and I'd probably do the same for the AMD side, although the AMD the 7700X could probably handle this cooler would probably be able to handle it better. But either way, I would probably recommend that you stepped up that 18 quid cooler to something like this Arctic liquid freezer 240 for 52 quid. So you would be spending an extra 30 quid on there. So I would say for an extra 60 quid on top of this price here, so for just shy of 900 quid, you'd get a 14600K with a 240, a decent 240 AIO, a motherboard that's got an extra 2 M.2 slots in it, 32 gigs of DDR 6000 CL30. It's a nice comfortable 10 nanosecond DIMM. A terabyte of storage, but you've got 2 slots to upgrade in the future. It's not a problem. There's plenty for you to start off with. A 9060 XT 16GB, solid GPU for 320 quid. And any case, this is a symbolic point of any case, but I will say it doesn't look that bad. It comes with a fan, at least one fan is coming in it. I don't know what the hell is going on here. I'm not quite sure how that works. It looks like it cuts straight into there, but it was in budget. So case is just susceptible. Maybe you've already got a case. Maybe you want to spend more money on a case. I would buy something like a Fractal Focus 2 or something for like 60 quid. You get like 2 140 fans in that thing and plenty of space to build in. It's a good solid case. There's loads of build quality to it, and that's what I would go with. Power supply, maybe go with even like a Gigabyte UD 850. You can get that for like an extra 15 quid on top of this price. So I would go with something like that because it's gold rated, so you got a bit more solidified. And I personally, like I said, would choose this over this, not because I think Nvidia are also much better than AMD. It's got nothing to do with that. It's the fact that it is literally 32% faster. Like this GPU for an extra £10. If you're buying the CPU from CEX, this is costing you an extra £10. Yes, okay. If it's just a straight buy, it's costing you an extra 20 quid. But this comes with a 5-year warranty, which I think is long enough on a GPU. And, you know, CEX are pretty good with it, to be fair. Like, I've had things fail and they just swap it out. It's not, they don't give you a credit note to what they trade in for. They give you a credit note to what they'd sell it for. That's what I mean. The value of the product, if you get me, at any given moment in time. So whatever they're selling this product for, they will give you that value. I think that's how it works. Anyways, this is what I would go with. I would literally put this together, and again, it's also susceptible. You could make this as baller as you wanted. Like I said, to be under 900 quid, you could literally make this a 14600K or a 14600KF, and with a better cooler, and everything else is the same, and it's still set up ready for you to drop something a little bit more powerful in the future. There's plenty of headroom in this power supply, so even though it's not one I would recommend, an 850 watt power supply running a 430 watt system, you shouldn't have a problem with that. You know, even on a sketchy one, you shouldn't have a fucking problem with that. It's half its capability, so there shouldn't be an issue there. So this would work perfectly fine. You could, like I said, for an extra 60 quid, you could step up the cooler and the CPU. But it's the same over on here. So over on the AMD side, 850 quid. This is what I would recommend: a 7600X with a 9060 XT, 16 gigabyte. I'm sure there's plenty in the people that would be much prefer this as a setup and system. Again, 830, under 400 watts, and you're on an 850 watt power supply. Even as a bronze and a Thermalright, you shouldn't be a problem. You're using half of its power. Like I said, you could save money there if you wanted to. You can literally get like a 550 watt is it MSI maybe? I can't remember. It might be like a Mag Bronze or something. Anyway, you can pick one up for like 50 quid. And it would power this system, so you could save 20 quid or so there if you wanted to get this back down to like 830. But you know, this is set up so that also you could literally swap this out for another 60 quid again, get the same Arctic liquid freezer 240 cooler and make this a 7700X and have those extra 2 cores, and basically you'd be matching that 14600K system. And again, there's 20 quid between the two, so it's completely up to you which way you went with it. But this is what I would recommend, and I would say that a PlayStation Pro really costs you 820 quid to buy it, because why would you have one without a disc drive? And you have to buy at least the 60 quid base subscription for you to even use the freaking thing, other than the games on your wall, which makes even more sense. If you turned around and said, well, you can't add the subscription in, that means you would have to add the disc drive in, wouldn't it? Like, if you didn't add the subscription in, you would have to add the disc drive in. Otherwise, it's just a pretty white bit of plastic in the corner of your freaking room, because you wouldn't be able to use it for anything. So you have to add one or the other. I would add both. It's 820 quid. Come at me, bro. Anyways, I hope you like the content. Thanks for watching. It's been a bit of a long one, but hey, this is me waffling about this and trying to explain my mentality for the build, why I would do that, and also CEX probably, before I go, CEX probably don't want me to show you this, but if I put in 12600K, right? You see this here? Now, not all of these systems are always in stock, but they do come into stock, right? This here, 700 quid, right? So this here, it's 560 quid, right? 560 quid, and it comes with a 4068 gig, right? So if you bought that, now I'm going to say this now, if you bought a custom PC from CEX, it's going to come with their warranty, right? They probably don't have this in stock, but see, it comes with the free 5-year warranty on this system, right? However, if you take stuff out of this system, they're not going to. They might give you a little bit of help on the warranty side, but usually if you take things apart, it tends to destroy warranties and stuff. Like, at the end of the day, they are holding it up for 5 years. However, if you bought this system for 560 quid, so they had it in stock, and you bought it for 560 quid, again, CEX probably do not want me to show you this. This is why I'm throwing it at the very, 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 very end of the video. But yeah, if you bought this system for 560 quid, it's got 4060 in there, yeah, and 64 gigs of DDR4. Right, yeah, you're on DDR4, but it's not bad. I'm on DDR4. It's not an issue. But you only really need 32 gigs of that. And usually a 64 gigs is a 4 gig stick. I'm guessing it's a 4 stick. So if this is a 4 sticks of DDR4, right, you could take 2 of those out. You could take them to CEX, and they will give you credit note. I would, from recollection, on your average DDR4 sticks, they only ever give you a singularly. They pay you about a tenner cash, so credit note is usually about 15 quid. So you get about 15 quid for 2 sticks. So 30 quid for the 2 sticks in credit notes. So if you took 2 of these sticks out, took them to CEX, they'll give you 30 quid for them, right, in credit notes, right? And then if you took that 4060 back, we'll go with one of the cheaper ones because it's only fair, isn't it? It's only fair. Like, I could literally be like, oh, well, it could be an MSI one. You could get lucky. Do you know what I mean? You could get lucky and end up with, you know, something like the MSI one in here. Oh, no. The 4060s. Yeah, something like the MSI one here for 280. If it's that one in there, you're going to get trade-in voucher of 200 quid, which is awesome. But we'll look at it as if it was this one. Do you know what I mean? Just the base. So you're going to get like 100 and... They'd give you 154 quid for that card straight away. But if you take it as credit notes, that's 180 quid, right? So roughly about 180 quid they'll give you trade-in for that card in credit, right? So you add that to the 30 quid before you had, yeah. Remember, we only started at 560 quid. We've got 700 quid to pay for. This is the base PlayStation that I'm aiming to price up as, right? So you've got a whole system there. You've still got 32 gigs of DDR4. That's not a problem, right? Yes, it's got I know it's got a hard drive in there, but we can address that, right? You've got this 4060. You're going to trade that in. You trade that in, you get 180 quid for it. You trade in 2 sticks of DDR4, you get 30 quid for that. Like, so you got 320. You've got 210 quid, and you were only at 560 in the first place. So you've spent 560, which means that there's what 140 quid left in there for 700 quid, yeah. So 140 quid left in there. You've just gained credit for 210 quid. So 140 quid with 210 quid is 350. What do you think I'm going to tell you to go buy? Again, we come back to that 3080 for 340 quid. And then you have a 12600KF, 32 gigs of DDR4. I think it had a 1 terabyte boot drive, or 500 gig boot drive with a I think it was 1 terabyte boot drive with a 2 terabyte hard drive. Regardless of whether you've got a base system with a 12600KF and a 3080. Obviously, you've got to kind of hope and pray that the PS power supply in there is good enough. But that's base 700 quid. So if you wanted to, you can literally up the storage in there with a brand new thing for like 50 quid. If you need a power supply, you can grab one for like 70 quid. But the fact of the matter is, can you, for 700 quid, build a PC that would destroy the PS5 Pro? And yes, you can. If you find the right deal, you can do that. And you have to remember that these products come with a 5-year warranty. Okay, you might have a bit of questioning from them, but if you're taking a GPU and some memory out of a system that they've warranted for 5 years. But I think on parts, I think it just basically works on the parts that you've got off them. So I don't know. You'd have to look into that. Like, but this would be a way for you to get a system for 700 quid that would destroy the PS5 Pro, because a 12600KF would destroy the CPU in a PS5 Pro, and a 3080 would destroy the GPU in a PS5 Pro. The memory, 32 gigs of DDR4, is better than with 10 gigs of GDR6X is better than 2 gigs of DDR5 and 16 gigs of GDR6. GDDR6. DD. I struggle with that one. Anyways, the GPU memory is faster. The CPU memory is going to be at least as fast, because let's be honest, PlayStation's probably running at 4800. So this is, yes, you can. If you want to make some sacrifices, you don't mind having some second-hand stuff, you can definitely find a PC for 700 quid. But again, above all of that else, you have to remember that a PC is more than just a PlayStation. Like, it's more than just a place to play games. There's so much more application to a PC. And so even if you're paying more for the PC, you're still going to be getting a better thing overall. So yes, if you're happy with used parts and you don't mind, I mean, I don't mind. These things come with like 5-year warranties, so it's not an issue, is it? If you're happy with used parts, you could use somewhere like CEX, and you could easily find a system that's fast enough. I mean, I'm pretty sure that right next to that was, look, that's got a 4068 Ti 8 gig, so you can get a bit more out of that. You can get the system that I've just explained for 800 quid straight up, but obviously if you did it this way round, because they're basically the same system. Oh no, there's slightly less storage, but if you did it this way round, you would end up with it for 700 quid, and then you could up the storage to just SSDs, just to NVMe straight away. You could upgrade that, like, that's not an issue, and you would have this system here for 700 quid. Well, maybe 750. So swings and roundabouts. Depends how you want to buy it. I mean, you can. I don't know why this is a 3070 Ti. Maybe it's because it's a K. It's a little bit more expensive, but yeah, you can literally buy them second hand with hardware that would easily beat it. So, like, as long as you're happy to take on second hand goods, you could easily destroy the PS5 for PS5 Pro for 700 pounds, right? As long as you're happy to do a bit of wangling. But for the cost of running a PS5 Pro for a year and to be able to use the friggin' thing, it would cost 820 quid, and yes, you can match it for within margin. 15 quid. You can whinge and moan about it all you want, but this would destroy a PS5 Pro. This would destroy a PS5 Pro, and they are both within margin of that 820 quid that it would cost you to even start playing on your PS5 Pro. Like, as I said, you can say that this shouldn't be taken into account, even though, like, if you had a digital one, you've got a digital PS5 Pro, so you could turn around and say, not everyone's going to buy it with a disc drive. No, not everyone is going to buy it with a disc drive. But if you're going to say that this shouldn't be taken into the price, then this has to be taken into the price. Because if you don't have a disc drive, and you don't have the base subscription, how are you using your PS5 Pro? Just curious, how are you using it? How are you even buying games? How are you even getting the games on there if you haven't got the base compulsory subscription of $60? How? Well, you would need a disc drive, wouldn't you, so that you could use your hard copies. So, like, you would have to make it £760 anyway, because it would have to either be this or this, and for me, it would be both. I would not have a Pro PlayStation without a disc drive. I just wouldn't do it. I don't, like, my mind wouldn't. It doesn't make any sense to me. If I had a Pro PlayStation and it didn't have a disc drive, it makes no sense to me. It means I can't use the wall of games that I would have if I was a PlayStation fan, right? It just makes no sense. So it would have to have the disc drive for one. And I personally include this, regardless of whether it's PlayStation or Xbox. I include this, at least a year of this, as the price, because it doesn't friggin' work without it. So you have to include it in the price, and that's £820. And £836 is close enough for me to say that this is a match for the PlayStation 5 Pro and would absolutely destroy it in quality and the way it play a game. And the same goes over here. Yes, it costs an extra £20 on over here. It costs you an extra £30, sorry, instead of an extra £15. So that between these two, you know, this is there's £15 between them, right? So it'll cost you an extra £15 to be an AMD fanboy. The platform does allow you to go for longer, put a newer CPU that hasn't even been released yet into it, whereas over on Intel, no, you don't have that, but you can slot in up to a 14900K, which is basically the CPU that benchmarkers are using at the moment to push Port Royale with a 5090, because the AMD CPUs can't bench like that. The 14900K seems to just be the king when it comes to doing that bit. And it's a super solid CPU, so there is plenty in this socket for you to be able to use above this 12600K. And like I said, I went into it with the 14. If you were willing to pay an extra £60 on this price here and make it £900, I would recommend this system with a 14600KF, or this system with a 7700X. I'm not trying to one side Intel over AMD or AMD over Intel, and there's not an Nvidia card in either of them. That's my second hand option, the 3080, because it is better than this GPU. It's 32% faster. That's a sizable difference for you to be able to take into account that it's happening, you know. So yeah, anyone that thinks that I favor Nvidia over everything else, no, I don't. I gave you an old Nvidia option, which is probably actually a better choice than this 9060 XT, because it does have DLSS 4, it does have DLAA, it does have reflex, and it does have access to AMD's frame gen in some titles. So you do get some of those benefits that the 16's got. Yes, the 9060 XT's got. Yes, it has more VRAM, but again, as I said, AMD cards tend to use 1 to 2 more gigabytes for the same process as an Nvidia card. The Nvidia cards are a little bit more efficient when it comes to VRAM. So really, it's only a 4 gigabyte increase. Yes, that is going to make a difference in games, but for 32% faster, I think I would rather have the extra frames at slightly less textures than have less frames with the slightly prettier textures, if you get me. Plus, I'm going second hand, so that means that I can I don't mind taking a few like hits in the sense of like textures and stuff because it's second hand. But yeah, they're my options. So anyone that thinks that I'm an Nvidia fan, no, I just use their GPUs because every time I upgrade my freaking GPU, Nvidia is the better option. Like, it's nothing to do with fanboying. Like I said, at 320 quid, this is literally the best GPU in the UK at 320 quid. For an extra 20 quid, you can buy a second-hand 3080. That's a no-brainer to me. It's got better. It has better, like, software stuff. Like, DLSS 4 is better than FSR. Like, whether you like it or not. And because of how open source AMD's software is, you could use the frame gen over there as well. And with 3.1, so any game that supports 3.1 and above, it means that you can also use the frame gen in connection with DLSS 4. So you don't even need to FSR the image to use the frame gen, which is freaking awesome. So, like, the 3080 has basically got the benefits that the 9060 XT has got, plus. So that you have to take into account. But yeah, for 320 quid new, for a new GPU, 320 quid, there isn't a better GPU on the market than the 9060 XT 16GB. There just isn't. There isn't a better GPU than it. But for an extra 20 quid, I would probably go second hand and get the 3080 because it's a better GPU. It is just a better GPU. Like, it's 32% faster. It's a better GPU. So it's completely up to you. But this is me showing you that it's more than capable. You are more than capable of building a PC that is far faster than a PS5 Pro for the same money. Obviously, this is the AMD one. I would recommend the Intel one just because it keeps the price down a little. And then again, like I said, over in the UK, we've got CEX. So I would probably buy the CPU and the GPU second hand, go with the 3080 and a second hand one of these, and save the money there to put onto the 3080, which is only just an extra 20 quid. And I would be destroying the PS5 Pro. So there you go, guys. It's this one or this one, and take options on your CPU and GPU about whether you choose to go second hand. And obviously there's always a way to wangle a deal so that it all works. But again, like I said, if you were looking for a 1-for-1 match between AMD and Intel, you've got the 12600KF, which is basically almost 1-for-1 with the 9700 XT, and then over here you've also got the exact same sort of thing over here between the 7700X and the 14600KF. They're basically it's look at, like, the only thing that's different is the 14600KF has more when it comes to multi-core over the 7700X than the 12600K does over the 7600X. So this is why I've chose these two CPUs, because they are really, really very close to each other performance-wise, and that's why these are my options for brand new parts, close to console, close to the PS5 Pro price, what you would pay to be on the console for a year. This is my options, and yes, it would absolutely destroy the PlayStation. So, could you build a system? Yes, 100%, massively. Could you find something secondhand that would destroy it? Yes, very much so. There is nothing wrong with you using a PlayStation and stuff. You just need to get this problem out of your brain where you think that your console is like far superior to a PC, because it's just not, guys. It's just not, right? Consoles have always been, if you just want to game and you want a cheap way into that, that's what consoles are about. Why do you think Xbox released the Series X with the Series S right next to it? It's because They know that their console, their X, is a cheap alternative to a PC, but they wanted to allow people that didn't have that budget to be able to still be able to game with everyone else. Whereas over on PlayStation, they were like, well, no, if you can't afford PlayStation, tough. Xbox are like, well, if you can't afford the Xbox, how about we make this 1080p version that is half the price, basically, so that you can game too. But obviously, PlayStation's better than Xbox, right? Alright, guys. I hope you like the content, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you, bye.
Like and subscribe. Thank you.